Hello, this is Parker Brisebois, Parker Thomas Brisebois, the first of his name, and once again, you are watching The Iridescent. Welcome back to the show. I've got an episode for you today that's a couple of recommendations and mostly a thought experiment. Less headlines today. A central theme revolving around climate change, but mostly just me dumping some of the shit that's been rattling around in my own head for the last couple days since I last saw you. Today's art installation is by the selfsame artist who brought you playful cat-like creatures playfully playing around on a playground or a hill. He used a similar technique for this a beautiful masterpiece here, in which he took paint and a paintbrush and applied it to a cardboard-like substance to create a painting. It's called Moonrise Fiefdom, a tribute to not ripping off the names of Wes Anderson films. In this piece, you can see the depiction of two of the greatest voids, two of the greatest mysterious open empty spaces that mankind has ever encountered, ever been able to fathom. One of them is the fathomless pit known as the ocean. It is the ancient mother. It is the bosom of our species. It is the warm soup, the salty broth from whence our amphibious ancestors proudly flopped out onto the beaches of the ancient times. Here it is depicted in motion, sort of a roiling mix of colors here. It's fluid, it's dynamic, it's not static. You know, something is constantly being created in its mysterious depths. The work itself is bifurcated laterally between the voids, separated by a band, a horizon denoted by our colorful atmosphere of this earth, the atmosphere from whence we as a species dispense all of our bullshit and pontificating out into it, and it creates this rainbow-like layer that reflects the colorful personalities of our misbegotten, meandering, philosophical species. You know, we put out a lot of bullshit in the air, and it doesn't make a lot of sense, but a lot of times it's pretty, to us anyway. Above that mess is the endless void of night, the mysterious space between the stars that we as a species have been looking up to for millennia, and shouting our discontent and our hopes and our dreams, and projecting our beliefs and our wonder and our whimsy into, since we've been able to do that since the first ape that was our ancestor got stoned on mushrooms they found under a rock, probably. Speaking of rocks, this one doesn't have any mushrooms on it because it is the moon. And the moon is dominating this masterpiece here, despite the fact that compared to the ocean and the space beyond, it's really not that big. That choice, that very deliberate choice by the artist, is a reflection of the anthrocentricity of our view of the universe as a species. The moon is a very symbolic fixture for people, right? It's always there, so it's comforting. It tends to be a light in the darkness, and the symbolism of that is just rife. We love that. It's a guardian, it's a protector, but it's also a distant watcher. You know, it's not powerful and sort of domineering like the sun. It's kind of reserved and mysterious. You know, it's often assigned feminine traits, so we think of the moon as like maybe mother, or like the font of feminine energy, right? It controls the tides, so it has very real implications on our world physically. And yet, in the grand cosmic scheme of things, it's not that big. But in this picture, it's front and center, just like mankind, humanity, is in our popular conception of the universe. Right? Even though the sun doesn't revolve around the earth, the universe revolves around the human species, right? That's how we think of stuff, right? That's that main character shit, right? On an aggregate, species-wide level, we're the biggest thing since sliced atoms, right? The Big Bang or whatever. I'm not sure if that's how that works, but I like to imagine that, plus the metaphor just seemed there, bread, atoms. Anyways, so that's our art. It is available for purchase. You need only contact me on YouTube or Instagram or Facebook or wherever it is you get your iridescent content. Just hit me up and you can purchase that. Well, I'm soft on the price. We can negotiate. Also for sale there is ad space, in case you didn't know. You can purchase ad space on this show, which my friend did, and he's got an ad for us today. This episode of the Iridescent is brought to you by No Hawks Nation. Tired of the Seattle Seahawks cheating? Tired of the 12th man? Tired of that one friend who encompasses all things you hate about the Seahawks? If you or a loved one deals with this on a daily basis, you are not alone. At No Hawks Nation, we provide a support system for you to safely discuss anything anti-Seahawks. It is completely anonymous and is covered by most insurances. You are not alone in this fight. Give us a call today. And for contact information, he left my Instagram handle. That is at the Iridescent Show on Instagram. So if you need a support network to talk anything anti-Seahawk with, contact me at the Iridescent Show. Comment on some of my posts, slide into my DMs, whatever. He'll be on the hotline the whole time. So that's our sponsor today for this episode. That is No Hawks Nation. That guy was obviously a California expat, and him being an expat, he is like me, and he moved from a part of the country that is more and more affected by climate change as the years go by. Which brings me to my first recommendation of today's episode, and that is a New York Times article, which I digested orally via a podcast called The Daily. On Sunday, they do a special edition called the Sunday Read. It's a little longer. They get some silky-voiced narrator to read a editorial piece, and this one was called How Climate Migration Will Reshape America. And it was a fascinating piece that went over the implications of climate change on population centers in the United States through an actuarial lens, largely. Most of the studies and information it was citing were recorded and analyzed for the insurance industry specifically, because the insurance industry is one that makes its money from people paying out of fear that something bad will happen to something they own. And what with climate change and all, bad stuff is happening to stuff that people own because we live in a private ownership society, and climate change breaks shit, floods, fires, hurricanes, el derecho, whatever that is. Polar vortexes, they destroy things. This article, this podcast, reviewed some of the goings-ons in the insurance industry as it pertains to climate change in places like Florida and my home state of California. Private insurance companies are just less and less incentivized to insure people for things like fires and floods because it no longer adds up for them to do so. If you're unaware of how the insurance company or industry works, and I'm by no means an expert, basically the way they calculate being able to stay profitable, stay viable, stay in business is taking payments from you who seeks to have, say, this mic insured, and telling you that if a rainstorm ever came and exploded this microphone and you didn't have this microphone, because you were paying $69 every month to keep it insured, they would buy you a brand new microphone. Now, they're basically taking out a bet that when they approve that policy, that this microphone is probably only like 3% likely to get rained on, God, if this has a 3% likelihood of getting rained on, then I'm just an idiot and they're dumb for taking out that policy. But basically, they're betting that they're never actually going to have to buy me a new microphone. They're just going to keep collecting $69 a month for me for as long as I have that policy out. Now, in light of climate change, insurance companies that are insuring properties in places like Florida against things like floods, those numbers don't add up that much anymore. That would be like me having to move under a bridge to record this show, and suddenly my policy is more worth it for me and less for the insurance company, because it went from 3% chance of getting rained on, this microphone, to, I don't know, 75% chance of getting rained on. And suddenly that $69 a month is a little more worth it for me to be paying, because there's more likely to be an event in which I need a new microphone, and they're going to buy it for me because I've been paying for that policy. In Florida, you're more likely to get flooded now because how best to describe it? The ice cubes in the glass that is our ocean continue to melt, so the liquid water in the glass that is our ocean continues to go up. And in a place like Florida, that's like here, there's more and more melted ice that's likely to ruin your floorboards and your carpet and flood the fuck out of your building. And those insurance companies no longer think it makes that much sense to take your money, because they're probably going to have to pay out more people for water damage. In California, in contrast, they brought up this example of a community in the Los Angeles area called Coffee Park, which is kind of a blue-collar suburban area, right? Like most parts of LA, there you could swing 1,000 dead cats in every single direction and you wouldn't hit a speck of green anywhere because it's all concrete. Therefore, insurance companies had historically graded it as a low to 0% risk of wildfire area. So if you're some bloke who lives in Coffee Park and you're paying for fire insurance on your shanty that you live in, because you work at Jiffy Lube, so you can only afford to live in a shanty with 9 other people, but you're forced to take out fire protection insurance or whatever, that insurance company, whoever it is like, fuck yeah, I want to give you a policy, and it'll only be $4.20 a month, right? And they're gonna rake that in, the insurance company, in their mind, because that area, Coffee Park, since it's got no foliage, nothing to light on fire, they're thinking that's just free money they're getting if they can sell you a policy. And sure, they will legally have to pay for the damages to your shanty if there is a fire, but in their actuarial calculations, the chances of that happening are so low, they're willing to take that risk, right? They're willing to make that gamble just so they can rake in that money. Now, a couple years ago, there was a fire in California, believe it or not. So intense and so volatile, so explosive, that it lit bits of wood and chaparral debris on fire so intensely, and with the combination of this insane swirling Santa Ana dry hot wind, that it blew embers up to, like, I think it's at 6 inches, maybe a foot long, into Coffee Park, you know. So this is miles away before there's like any plants in any notable concentration. It blew those burning bits into Coffee Park, so it lit some of the fucking shanties and shanty towns on fire, you know, the ones between the strip malls and all the other shit in LA, and burned a bunch of them down. It was called the Tubbs Fire, and there was a ton of property damage. It was just like a massive urban fire, and those insurance companies are going, oh fuck, we're actually gonna have to pay out. That sucks. So the implications of that are that areas like Coffee Park are just, even though before they were like zero risk for insurance companies, they're going to get flagged, and people might not be able to get their stuff insured. Insurance companies will have to up and leave, and that's going to be happening more and more all around the United States. Now, fucking insurance company, I don't really care. I think that whole industry is like slightly nefarious anyway, because the model is selling fear, right? Selling fear of the risk of something bad happening. But the fact that those companies are no longer feeling like they can operate by selling policies in places like California or Florida, massive population centers, to me feels like a real canary in the coal mine of fucking livability. If people won't insure property in areas like that, that's because the insurance industry is doing an analysis that is predicting that those places are going to be too fucking dangerous to live in the not so distant future. So, what are the implications of that? Well, people who have a lot of private property and assets and capital that they want to protect, i.e. wealthier people, are going to be aware of that, and they're not going to be able to accept having assets that are uninsured because that's, financially not very savvy or whatever. That's like how we're institutionalized to think. That's conventional wisdom. So they're just going to take their shit and they're going to up and leave. And if you're richer, you're more mobile anyway. So this article predicts a movement north, just of population, of industry, of everything. We're just going upwards. So if you're from California and you're a Niners fan, a Chargers fan, a Raiders fan, a Rams fan, you're probably not a Rams fan. Who the fuck is actually a Rams fan from LA? You're going to be living up here with me in Washington pretty soon here, bro. So get ready for that. Or fucking Idaho or North Dakota or some shit. But that's just the trend. And one last comparative analysis that they gave, or example they gave, or orienting anecdote that they gave in that article was the analogy of the Dust Bowl in the 1930s when all the crops dried up in Oklahoma and Texas and Arkansas and areas like that, and all the Okies had to move out west, they were incentivized to by expansions of the Homesteading Act. It came from Washington, D.C. that kind of gave them reason to come out to California to try to make it. That's a ton of people that were displaced, and the generational economic ramifications of such an event are profound and long-lasting. They talked about some studies that showed that Dust Bowl survivors, people who made it out here, not only was it way worse and way more difficult for them in the short term, but generationally, the descendants of Dust Bowl survivors are less likely to go to college than people who didn't have to endure the Dust Bowl. And there's all kinds of numbers that show, if you don't go to school, you're going to make less money, just on average. I'm probably an exemption to that rule, but just for now. So, anyways, check that out. That gets the official Iridescent show endorsement as a really good read and a really good listen. The other piece of media that gets the go fucking watch this stamp, the GFTW, is a movie that I just saw on Netflix, or not Netflix, Hulu. Same shit. They're going to be the same thing in the next couple of years anyway. I'm calling it here. Is a movie called Sorry to Bother You. It was recommended to me by my roommate, and it was amazing. It came out in 2018, and it is a dystopian satire, right? It's a comedy that's just barely science fiction, and you can't even really confirm that it is science fiction until about 3/4 of the way through, because of a mind-boggling plot twist. It's the type of dystopian satire that absolutely nails it because the science fiction elements of it are so subtle and so parallel with the dystopian elements of our own society, of which there are an increasing amount in 2020, that you barely notice. You barely notice that it's even an alternate reality or the near future. The leading actor is Lakeith Stanfield, who is an up-and-comer. The dude's in Atlanta. He was in Get Out. He's been in a couple other things that fail to come to mind now, but this dude's a good actor, and I think he's going to be a big deal going forward. He plays a character named Cassius Green, who is a black man from Oakland, who is at the start of the movie kind of experiencing the sort of roiling existential angst that many of us experience in probably like the mid-20s, I would say he was, where not only are they seeking direction in their career, stable employment with enough pay to sustain any kind of lifestyle that one might aspire to for, a middle-class American, but also the bigger questions about legacy. What am I going to leave behind? What is my career going to have meant whenever I get it off the ground? And he's got this girlfriend played by Tessa Thompson, who is an artist. She's gorgeous and plays a really good part in this movie. She's sort of more a hippy-dippy activist type, upbeat, go with the flow. And the tension comes when a character named Squeeze comes into the picture, and he's played by the guy who played Glenn in The Walking Dead, who's Kevin Yuen. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but he's a good actor too. He comes into the picture. He's a co-worker of Lakeith Stanfield's character at a telemarketing company, and they just, oh my god, it resonated with me deeply in my bones. It's just this horrible, soul-sucking job that means nothing. It's selling a bunch of bullshit to people who don't need it, by people who don't care about it, but they're all just there because they got to make a buck because it's so hard to get by in life anyway. And they start to organize, and there's sort of this classic tension within labor dynamic going on. Scabs versus the picket line. The corporate puppet masters pulling the strings and cherry picking dudes out of that environment so that they can backstab the people that they've been in solidarity with. It's great. It's really intense. It's super great. And there's one of the villains is played by Armie Hammer, and he's the CEO of this company called Worry Free, and it's a total allegory to Amazon. Except imagine if Amazon's fulfillment centers were also bunkhouses, not even dorms, just bunkhouses. So the golden handcuffs, as it were, that thing that a lot of up-and-coming trendy tech companies provide their employees, where they have basically no reason to leave the campuses at which they work ever, because all of their needs are provided for. They've got all kinds of services, dining hall, exercise facilities, recreation facilities, fucking on-site bars, whatever. Imagine if it was that. Plus, you could sleep there. And the contracts of employment were actually lifetime. So you never need leave. It's just an amazing, incisive, trippy, mindfuck examination of this sort of not so fantastical extreme of the direction we're heading in as consumer laborers in the United States in 2020, in a world with constantly monopolizing industries and a populace that continues to grow disillusioned and confused and frightened. And yeah, I won't spoil it for you, but I really want you to watch it. Yeah, let me know what you think. Anyways, kind of a fluffy episode for you, but I'll have more for you soon. I'm going to drop another episode this week in which I do a thought experiment on education reform. Looking forward to that. Anyways, thanks for watching. This is Parker Breezeball. You've been watching the Iridescent. Until next time, peace!